All right. So Sachin, thank you for talking to me today. What you've got to say is going to be really valuable to all of the different people who are going to be watching it from the University of Waterloo. So can I just ask you to start by telling me about your job now as the Divisional Vice President, Marketing Strategy and Insights at the Bay, what you do and how your career led you to the role that you're in now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Peter. Nice to meet you. And yeah, I'd love to share a bit about my career, my path, and all those good things. So I graduated out of school. My first job was with the Bay in the rotational development program. I started out in the merchandising side, so buying, planning. I didn't really like either of those things very much. Then I moved into finance. Didn't like that very much either. So I had, I was lucky in the sense that I was in an environment which allowed for a lot of quick kind of rotations and changes and learning like cross-functional things. And for me, when I was really, young and out of school and a little bit stupid, that was helpful because it allowed me to really experience different things, different parts of the organization, and you start to really get a sense of what you like, what you don't like. And so I was really fortunate to get an opportunity to move into a role on the CRM analytics team, which I wasn't really qualified for, but I knew I made a good connection with the leader of that team, and he gave me a shot. And that was my first really array into the world of marketing analytics, and really the first job I liked. So I did that role for about a year to a year and a half, and my job was really to translate data into meaningful and simple insights for executives who don't really understand data. And that was almost something that skill set was almost what I've built my career on, is what I would say. So what I find is there's, a lot of really strong technical people in almost every company who can do amazing work, whether it's write scripts, manipulate data in ways that are really helpful. And then there are executives who want to be data driven but don't really know what that means. And then there's kind of the translation in between that, which is always lacking, because the data people don't really know how to explain it well to those kinds of leaders, and the leaders don't really know how to get to the right technical problems necessarily. So it's kind of speaking two different languages, and my role at that point was to be a bit of a translator to bridge that gap a little bit. And I started doing that, and started to develop a bit of a reputation in the organization for doing that kind of work, which led me to another role, which was part of a team that we called marketing acceleration. And so the role of that team was really just to grow the business in any way we can, basically. It was basically what now a lot of organizations call growth marketing. So I did that for quite a while, worked with, the Googles and Facebooks of the world to try and build and modernize the Bay through kind of technology and data and marketing that's more digital focused. And so learned about a lot of that on the fly. And so at that point, I had experience with customer data, analytics, media, marketing, and all of that kind of led to that next role, which I'm currently in, which is really an all-encompassing role around marketing strategy, insights, and my role is really to solve problems that the organization has. Could be really across the board. Generally, they're more customer and/or marketing focused, but our team kind of oversees a few different groups. So I have an analytics team, a strategic analytics team. They're really in charge of building business cases, finding the right kind of insights from our data. I have a research and insights team, which is in charge of really going out to market, finding, the right consumer lens on things, the right problems, understanding kind of the macro picture. I have a marketing strategy team who really is taking those insights and applying them to our overall marketing programs and across the organization. And finally, I have a growth marketing team, which is in charge of that kind of A/B testing funnel. So almost all of those previous roles kind of in one in some sort of way.
A great construction of your career. You performed a lot of different roles, worked in a lot of different areas, and now you've moved into a role where you're exploiting that and providing great value, I'm sure, to the organization. As someone with that experience, I think would be valuable in any organization. So, and I think that's going to be valuable for the people who are going to watch this interview. What do you see as the main changes that are taking place in the retail sector today? To what extent are these driven by technology, and how has COVID impacted those?
Yeah, it's a it's a great question. I mean, like when you think about COVID and the industries that it impacted, retail had to be one of the top. I would say anything that really was consumer driven by people that's call it, you know, discretionary, the things that are more optional, and you know, the Bay specifically were in the wants business, not necessarily the needs business, like a you know, grocery store. So massive disruption across the industry. Even before COVID, right? I think that the biggest catalyst that's changed the industry has been the internet, right? And COVID really accelerated that dramatically because of the fact that there was so many times during that period where we couldn't actually go out into stores. We had to shop online. And you know, when you really think about it, the reason retail existed to begin with was because single kind of vendors who make their own products couldn't really reach consumers in a way at scale, with economies of scale. When you think about, you know, let's say Nike, back in the day, they needed channels to reach customers at scale, and you know, big department stores had big real estate. They had the economies of scale to do that. They were running flyer programs to the whole country every week. A single vendor just couldn't do that. The model didn't work for them. Now you have this thing called the internet launched, where you can launch your own store virtually at a basically no cost and reach consumers directly. And that's why this D2C movement started. And so rather than paying a retailer to resell products, I can go directly to a consumer and pay for marketing to do that. And so that has just transformed the whole dynamics and ecosystem of the bargaining power between vendors and retailers, and the way almost the world works in that space. And COVID obviously accelerated that in an even more aggressive way, because of what happened, right, with lockdowns and all of that. And you know, Canada before COVID was a very underpenetrated e-commerce market based on its size and populace and GDP. After the pandemic, or during the pandemic rather, it was the fastest growing e-commerce market out of all the G7 countries, because of the fact that it was so underpenetrated. And so we've almost caught up now. And the interesting thing is, a lot of the retail businesses weren't really ready for that, because it wasn't as prioritized as it was in the US or other big markets. And so now, like, everybody's trying to play catch up, do digital transformation and all these things. And it's an interesting and exciting time to be in the space, I think.
Absolutely. And you're dealing with these things from the Bay. So how have those changes impacted the Bay? And can you give me a sense of the scale of the challenges that the organization faces?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, the organization, I mean, for those of you who follow, you know, the capital markets or in that space, there's been a lot of really press around HBC and what we've done, and we've actually split all of our properties between stores and e-com. So Saks was the first business that did this. They operated, you know, as Saks Fifth Avenue. And as COVID started, our leadership team, you know, realized the market was viewing e-commerce companies and call it traditional department store companies very differently. So they decided to split the two companies. And so Saks.com is now its own entity that is, you know, raised money and it has a separate kind of ownership almost to a degree. Saks off Fifth did the same thing. The Bay.com and Hudson's Bay are now two separate companies as well. And you know, so that is quite literally a change that's happened because of this. And so we now have the challenge of basically building this almost Bay.com as an e-com pure play business, with all of the legacy systems and processes and people and business model to almost transform. And so I think that's the challenge that we're facing now. How do we do what we want to do, which is be the best e-commerce site in Canada, and almost use all of the historical legacy that we've had in a positive way, while kind of catching up on the debt that we've developed from a technology standpoint.
And I'm interested in how the Bay decides on its strategy to be able to deal with these issues, and how it is going to make its response. So can you talk about that, how the Bay develops its strategy, and what the challenges are in considering change of this scale in a long established organization that in the past probably didn't move quite so quickly?
Yeah, no, it's very, very fair kind of comment on speed. Big companies generally don't move fast because there's lots of layers and lots of things to consider. And it's almost interesting in a way. The pandemic taught us to move very fast because we just had to. 1 week, the government said we had to shut down. Next week, they allowed it to reopen. So consumer sentiment was going up, down, left, right, all over the place. And so as a result, you have to be very reactive in how you run marketing, how you go to market, how you buy product, your supply chain, all sorts of things. And so in a way, the pandemic kind of built that muscle for us a little bit. And so what we're almost, how we approach our go-to-market now is in a very kind of pragmatic way to say, how do we look at, our process, go-to-market process, the lead times to do things, how do we make things tighter in cases that we don't need to be so, like traditionally retail is built a year in advance, right? And the world we live in just doesn't allow for that. So how do we be more dynamic? And so shifting a lot more of our money to digital marketing instead of long lead time print type marketing where you're committing to paper and all those things. And so adapting to really just the situation and being forced to make decisions very quickly, it's something I think we're a lot better at now, and it's going to bode well for us as we go through this digital transformation, and we're going to have to make a lot of those tough decisions.
What I'm hearing you say, I'm not sure if this is what a correct interpretation of what you're saying, but is that rather than have a grand strategy that you would follow over a year or 5 years or whatever it might be, the organization has learned to adapt and change quickly in reaction to a lot of the things that might be going on that would impact it. I'm not sure if that's a correct interpretation of what you're saying, or...
No, I mean, I think that's what has sort of happened. I think, we do have, of course, our 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan, and, where we want to invest capital, how we want to focus our business going forward, what we want to make our core competencies. I can't really share too many of those details necessarily, but I think the idea is like we again kind of took a look at this dynamic shift of, those economies of scale that I talked about before, like why retail existed to begin with. And so we really have been asking ourselves, well, what is our kind of business model? What is our economies of scale? Why do we exist to the world at this point in time? And it's now building this almost ecosystem for our vendors that they simply just have to be a part of because it's such a great platform. And so that's really the strategy now, is building this platform, a technology platform that vendors can tap into that just works. I mean, that's what Amazon has done, and that's what's made them so successful. And so it's almost moving our core competency from, buying a lot of product and curating brands, merchandising, into technology as almost our core competency in marketing and fulfillment and all those things that are really services that we can provide vendors that they simply couldn't do themselves if they wanted to.
So that seems pretty clear. So if we were to imagine what the Bay might look like after the changes that you're involved with, it would look a bit more like Amazon and a lot less like a traditional department store chain. So presumably that means there may be less stores, or the stores would do different things, and a lot more of the business will operate online. Is that broadly correct? Or?
I mean, I think the stores are completely almost different. Like, and that's why we have again the two divisions, right? Like the store business, to run a store business, you need a very different type of talent, and a type of mindset, a type of personnel, a type of business model than to run an e-commerce business. And I think that's what we really realized. Stores, I think, are not going anywhere. They have a place and time and a purpose that simply cannot be met on e-com in a lot of ways. And that's the inspiration, the touch, the feel of product. There's a lot of categories that people just don't want to shop online, and that adoption is going to be very challenging. So I don't think it's a matter of choosing between the channels. Rather, how do we double down on what makes each channel really good at what they're meant to be doing? And so that's almost the way I would think about it. I think the .com business and Amazon, of course, is a very unique business, but I think that kind of marketplace type model, when you look at, we've launched a marketplace business as well. Like that certainly is a model where we see ourselves heading. No question about that. Okay,
so I've got a sense of where you're going. What do you see as the main challenges in implementing this? And maybe you could say a little bit about how you're going to overcome them, or how you are overcoming them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as I said, you're dealing with literally the oldest company in North America, right? We're 352 years old. And with that comes a lot of, we have a great story, a great brand, a lot of positive things, but we also have systems that are like 30 plus years old. You have, processes, things that are just not, you don't have the advantage of a business that just started today from scratch from a technology standpoint, right? And so that requires almost plumbing, and like there's just so much work that needs to be done from that standpoint to get us really quickly up to where we need to go. And we don't have the luxury of taking 5+ years to build something like a startup would. We have to literally leapfrog in a very aggressive way very quickly. And so that's the challenge at hand. And I think how we're overcoming it really is by building a best-in-class team. We're sourcing leaders from wherever we can in the world, people who have known how to do this really well. We're investing in technology, we're investing in the right things, and we're going to hope all those things kind of triangulate in a way they need to, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I hope they will too, and I'm encouraged by the way you're talking about it, and the likelihood that you'll be successful. So, as far as your customers are concerned, this is a change for them. How do you manage those changes with them, in the sense that you're creating new channels for them to interact with you? Some will still go to stores, I expect, in your vision. Some will do things online. What has it meant for how you've dealt with your customers and introduced them to the new way that you're going to be doing things?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think customers are going to shop where they want to shop based on the time of the day, based on the preference, based on what they want to buy, based on where they are. There's a lot of factors that are going to, and so our job is not to force adoption of anything. Our job is to still have, to customers, we're still one company, an omni-channel company, one loyalty program, one similar, the brands will be still the same across channels, right? So I think it's still the same Hudson's Bay company that they're going to always be used to and they know and love. I think it's more really the changes that you'll start to see will be more catered to almost leveraging those channels' strengths in the best way that we can. So your e-commerce business becomes a lot more transactional, about breadth of product, about really sharp pricing, about marketplace, about all the SKUs, and stores become much more about this discovery and curation and amazing service and all those things that make stores great. And so I think it'll be really about experience across both channels, and the experience will be different in a way, but in a way that's going to really be amazing for our customers.
So you're saying you're going to leverage the past and the future and put them together into something that will be exciting and better for your customers.
I think that's a great way of saying it.
Okay. You talked earlier about your new ecosystem, and I'm interested in what all this will mean for your suppliers and business partners, and what that's meant as far as how you're managing the change in the relationship with them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as close to that part of the business necessarily, but I think our message to our vendor community is really that we are going to win in this market, and we want to partner with you and do it together. And whether that's building you amazing storefront capabilities with us, or having a great e-com shop, we're here to do that with you. And I think it'll be a great platform for vendors and customers alike.
Okay, and then the other element, of course, very important, is your employees. How are they being impacted by digital change, and what are you doing to deal with that? Do they need new skills? Are existing employees able to change sufficiently, or will you need new employees? I know you talked about bringing in new people to develop your strategy and implement the changes, but employees more broadly, what is the what's happening there?
So I mean, it's a good one. I think there's a bit of a learning curve for anybody, right? Who even for people who are in technology, there's always a learning curve, right? I think the nature of technology in the world, especially where we are now, is it's changing just as fast as it ever has, if not faster. And so I think it's really about having an always-on learning mindset, right? And I think that's something we want to instill in our organization, our employees, and make sure we're empowering them with the right level of resources to do that. And so it really depends on what your functional area is, right? But in marketing, for example, we now are focused on making sure everybody has literacy around digital marketing and the metrics, and how to really live in that world. In the merchandising organization, it would be much different. It would be more about, how to use data and leverage data to buy in a much more, call it data-driven way to really drive the most efficiencies there. And so there's every part of the organization almost has a different way of digitizing in a way, which it means there's not really any one size fits all way to do it. It's more about, again, that culture and culturation of always on learning and being uncomfortable to really grow.
Yeah, you're mentioning a lot there about that new skills are going to be required in a lot of areas, but they're going to vary depending on the area. But you seem very conscious that that's the case, and that support and action needs to be taken to enable that to happen. But you're also talking about a broader culture or cultural change around learning and things like that too. So you seem you're incorporating a lot of elements in your response, and of course, they're all very important. I've only got one more question, which is that people who are going to be watching this, some of them will be completing their degrees soon, some will have completed their degrees a long time ago. But for those who are going to be going out to work early in their career, based on your career experience, you've built a very good career. It seems to me you've been very conscious about that. So what advice would you have for people coming behind you and starting their own careers soon?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's exciting times for anyone in that boat. Congratulations to those of you who are graduating. I think the biggest thing I would really kind of want to get in people's minds is don't always look for the perfect opportunity, right? I think perfection is is almost impossible. It's just there's going to be a company that will check off some of your boxes, not the other. And I think having that mindset will almost always lead to a point where you're not gonna find exactly what you want. I think the attitude I had at the time, at least, was, you know, I want to just go learn and find experience where I can be in an environment that encourages growth, movement, learning, exposure to different things, because, you know, what you learn in school and what you think you want to do and what you end up actually doing are likely going to be different, and maybe they're not going to be widely different, but when you actually work in the workforce and you start to see things, you start to understand what you like, what you don't like, your perspectives start to just change very quickly. You know, coming out of school, I thought I was gonna go work in a big company for 1 to 2 years, learn a few things, and then go like start my own business or work for a startup or something like that. And, you know, lo and behold, I'm still working for a big company, and growing at the same time, still learning a lot and still having a great experience. And so I think it's that openness to really just be a sponge, and really discover about yourself, discover yourself a little bit is the mindset I think that you need to have.
Absolutely, good advice, and thanks for talking to me today, Sachin. I really appreciate it. What you've said is valuable, and I think it's going to be helpful to lots of people. So thanks for doing it.
No problem. Thank you.